Vera, what's happening?
Not much. How are you doing?
I'm good. Um, I'm good. Where are you?
I'm in bed in Los Angeles,
In
actually.
bed in Los Angeles. Do you live
Yeah,
there?
I do. I live
Oh,
in LA. Yeah,
did you
that's where I
grow
am
up
now.
in it? Are you a Los Angelino kind of grow up there kind of person?
I was born out here, but then I grew up between New York City and Canada. My
Hmm.
dad's Canadian
Hmm.
and hardcore Canadian, like woods kind of thing.
Oh,
And
that's
so,
what like in
yeah,
the
that's what that means.
woods.
And
Yeah.
in the woods, and also, very apologetic. That's
Sure.
also
Yeah.
part of it. He born on Canada Day, my dad.
Oh
So
my goodness. That
that
is
is
a
the
real Canadian.
that's a real Canadian. That's the
Yeah.
vibe. So I'm half and half. I'm half American, half Canadian, and solidly grew up between the two.
So you grew up in New York. What was that like? In
And it was, it was wonderful in so many ways. It was completely different than I would imagine growing up anywhere else would be. I
hmm
mean, I was like fully moving myself around the street at 12 essentially,
Yeah.
and like taking the subway and exposed to so many different people and so many different experiences, and a lot of substances certainly.
Right.
I was not a good teenager, in my parents' eyes, but yeah, it was really remarkable. I mean, it certainly informed what I do now in the sense of this like
Yeah.
bringing together of so many disparate sources of inspiration.
I'm just forever jealous of anyone who's lived in New York longer than a year because I never have. I feel like I could grow up there still. I could be a different person if I moved there. But
I th- I think you I think you could. I mean,
yeah,
also it's you would have to become a different person because spatially you'd be crammed in. And then you have to, you know, I feel like it externalizes people in a really cool way, that
right.
city, because you have to go out of your house because your house is a shoebox.
That's right. What do you think about this? I've asked a few people this that have either grown up or lived extensively in New York. I think I want to retire, which I never will do, but I think I want to be an old person, like right smack dab in the middle of Manhattan, in a shoebox, because you don't need
Yeah.
anything when you're old.
I th- I think that's fabulous. I mean,
As long as I
especially
can get
because,
up and down the stairs, I guess.
well, that would be good for you. The mobility, it's
Yeah.
good for your joints. You know, I think that that's a wonderful idea because people really slag on New York and New Yorkers in the sense that, oh, it's really cold and people are really mean. But I think that that's just a perspective.
Yeah.
You know, I found people to be extremely loving and caring and helpful, and really look out for each other there, especially if you foster a community, as you have to do anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just expect people to show up and care for you. You have to give back.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Here I go. I'm on my way. I got to figure out a retirement spot in Manhattan.
I wish you well. Yeah.
So, when did you? What was the very first spark of performing music or chasing music as either performance or a hobby or even going to shows?
Well, going to shows is a completely different thing for me. I mean, I always dreamed of being a musician as a kid. I would dream of performing for people and think of myself singing for people. And when I was young, I did, I would put on plays and stuff for my parents with my sisters and friends. And I did play a bit of classical piano growing up, though I was a very bad student and wanted to learn like the most complicated songs by memory. I refused to read music. I just wanted to immediately be able to play Rachmaninoff piano concertos, which you can imagine just didn't go too well. But I did have a piano teacher who at least tried and fostered that wonder in me, which went a long way.
That's great.
Wonderful. She was amazing. Canadian. Um, and but then, over the course of a life, like we get worn down, and even as young kids, like you kind of start these limiting beliefs pile up on you, and I started to become really afraid of singing and playing. I was a punk kid and growing up in the streets of New York City, so I went to loads and loads of shows and dreamed of being up on those stages.
Yeah.
And then I started in college secretly trying, and I do say trying to teach myself to play guitar and sort of writing songs, kind of, but I was still really afraid. And I had this wonderful poetry mentor who at one point came up to me and said, so tell me, what do you do when you're not like in school? And I said, oh, I do this and I do that. And she said, no, that's not what I'm asking for. And I said, well, I secretly play guitar and I really want to sing. And she said, oh, that's what's going on. Your poetry is not, it's not poetry. They're songs, essentially. These are lyrics. And basically she was saying that my words, I was failing when it came to poetry. I was failing at writing interesting, good poetry, but I was writing songs. And so that was sort of a spark, but then again, just like never let myself. And then I reconnected with one of my oldest friends on earth, who's Elvis Perkins, a brilliant songwriter. And I'd known him since forever, my entire life, but we reconnected romantically and as very close friends. And a little ways into our relationship, he approached me and said that he wanted me to play bass in his band. And I was like, absolutely not. Like,
and you were just learning guitar, or?
I mean, I was like, I don't think, I would have not considered myself to be able to play guitar at that point.
Right.
I think I was clearly, because he saw something in me. You know, we'd jam and play together, and usually sort of different instruments than guitar and bass, but he said specifically that he felt that I had this sense of rhythm that he really wanted on stage with him. And I was like, whoa, I don't think I'm just not going to be able to do that. But I loved him so much and I trusted him. And so I stopped. From the time I was 12 years old, I was a super hardcore weed smoker, like high from the time I woke up until the time I went to sleep. Mm-hmm. And I, in order to play bass, I quit smoking weed. And this is actually one of my, this will come back around, but I quit smoking weed because I had to learn these songs. And Elvis's music is complicated.
Yes,
like,
it is.
They're weird chords.
Yeah. And
when you think it's going to go to a major, it goes to some strange minor chord that doesn't exist. It's like, and so I ended up going on tour with him and still terrified to sing, though, like literally miming my backup vocals, actually.
Did the bass playing kind of come together?
Yeah, I think so. Great. I mean, I hope so. Yeah. I was not, at that point, I would say that I was really just delivering. I wasn't playing music. I was just delivering what I needed to deliver. But it worked. Yeah. And then, a couple of years later, to be totally honest, what happened is that, like, I stumbled into a plant medicine ceremony. And Elvis and I went in together. I thought that it was going to be to, like, save our relationship. We were on the rocks. I was like, oh, yeah, we're going to go in here. Medicine's going to fix us. Mm-hmm. And it did the complete opposite. It split us up. And it said to me that I needed to make a record. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so I called our front of house, or emailed the longtime front of house who worked with the Cold War kids. That's how we actually met him originally. Right. Was Elvis had toured with you guys at some point. And the great Beeman, David Beeman. And I sent him these 3 like weird little demos that I'd made and said, I think I'm gonna, I'd like to try and make like a really easy small EP. Mm-hmm. And he said, come to St. Louis, we'll do it. It's easy. We'll do it in a weekend. It'll be so fun. It'll be great. And God bless David Beeman. That ended up being 9 months of just absolute insanity because it opened something up in me. And I just walked in there and I ended up making this sprawling, intricate, record that I was so intense about and methodical about, and he, shepherded it basically all the way through. Yeah, and then that was that, and then somehow that little thing caught a spark.
Yeah.
And there I was, however many years later, playing on stage at the Bowery Ballroom, where I'd seen my favorite
Whoa.
people play, and that gives me chills to think about. Like, I've been saying recently, especially with regard to this record, and like the line, which
Yeah.
has been played or will be played on the show, basically that I make music for my 14-year-old self. I make music for that punk kid
All right.
in the Walkman, in the
Okay.
subway in New York
Yeah.
City. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you stuck with that 9 months. I could also, I could see it going another way, especially your first endeavor. You could have been like, fuck this.
Yeah.
But you and Beeman did not do that.
We did not do that. And part of it was because I knew going in that it just had to be me alone playing all
Okay.
of it.
It was everything?
It was
You
everything.
alone?
I played
Yeah.
everything. I made every sound on that record. And I think if I had had other people's input besides Beeman and like other people who worked in the studio, friends, that it could have gone the opposite way, because I wasn't yet assured in my vision.
Yeah.
And that process was so necessary for me to then be able to come back with this record and have 60 people on it, or however
Right,
many,
yeah.
and be able to say, this is what I want, and I know what I want, even if it doesn't sound quote unquote correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And to this new record, we're here to
Yeah.
talk about Peacemaker, which is a beautiful, like, sprawling sonic adventure. And I'd like you to explain it, but for me, it's the combination of your words and the music and the sonic experience. It clearly illustrates kind of a Western landscape, but it's got a lot of Cormac McCarthy pain in there. I hate to sound cliche, but it's
Not cliche. Look at my
it's-
background.
but there's beauty in all of that pain, and I'm just kind of wondering, different Shades, your first record, it is, for me, it's different, and which Shades is a really beautiful record. The thing that stands out on Peacemaker is that there is a ferocity in this, and I'm just wondering where that came from, how you made that shift, because it's significant. I dug pretty deep into both records, and to be honest, at first I was like, oh, okay, I see this style, but then it's a lot emotionally different for me, and just kind of wondering where you were when you started writing this Peacemaker.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that. I think a great interview that I did toward the end of the touring cycle with Shades, someone said that in the course of, performing these songs, I'd gone from Dido to Medea, if you know, like,
Right. Great.
mythologically.
Well put.
And yeah, and especially with the end of that, the end of Shades, where it's like, don't go, please
Sure.
don't go, and there's that weeping sense. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's the stages of grief. Maybe it's part of that. It's like moving from grief, like moving from this sadness into anger. A lot was going on in my life. I love that you bring up Cormac McCarthy. I can't remember if that's even in the press materials, but Blood Meridian was my favorite book growing up in high school. I wrote a really wild paper on it that definitely changed the trajectory of my life, in the sense of my like writing style and the way that I think about words, and that sort of pretension, for lack of a better word, like this bigness and verbosity, which
Yeah.
I can't escape from. That's me. But emotionally, yeah, I went through a lot. Shades came at a really difficult time in my life, and Peacemaker too. I mean, a lot of those songs were actually written before, or not a lot of them, but some of the key ones, like Instrument of War, which I consider to be like the thematic centerpiece of the record, even though it's the end. That was one of the earliest songs I ever wrote, and I tell people now, like, I don't think I'd have the balls to write a song like that now. That squarely comes from beginner's mind, and
Sure.
because it's just wild what I put in there. But I've always had this sense, this, like, I was born with this rage in my body as a kid. I was an angry kid, but I wasn't allowed to express it. As many, we're not really allowed to express anger. We don't learn how to healthily express anger in the West,
Right.
really anywhere anymore, especially women. And so I guess the process of singing has always been for me, and making music a form of alchemy, essentially, of working with these emotions to find a way to transmute them into something positive. And so I guess the emotion that I was really working with here was anger, and it was anger on my personal anger, it was transpersonal anger, it was global anger.
Yeah.
We've all been through so much. I mean, I was working on this record essentially for, through 2019 and even into 2020.
Oh, okay.
Not like hardcore. We'd tracked most things by the time that COVID hit, but still there was, I was able to infuse some of that, just what is going on
Yeah. Yeah.
into that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's actually a positive thing. I was driving today, and I was kind of, thinking about talking to you, and there's something that's stuck with me. That's a John Lydon lyric, and it's I think it may be the only lyric in the song, and he just says, "Anger is an energy," and I probably kind of that caught onto that as a older teen, but I took it in a pretty positive way, not even a pessimistic way.
Yeah.
Which I also think pessimism can be positive too, but I'll just stick with anger for now. But yeah, that's kind of what I latched onto, as I was listening to the record in the car today. That anger for sure is an energy, but I think just saying that can put some positivity to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go down this because this is a deep rabbit hole, but but there's this something called like the scale of consciousness, essentially, and there's like scale of emotions. It's a scale of emotions basically, and where they vibrate. It's very woo-woo, but anger is actually like higher up than you would think. Shame and guilt is all the way at the bottom of the emotional scale because they're repressed. And so the worst possible human acts actually come out of shame and guilt, not necessarily anger.
Right.
Because at least anger is expressing. And if we are expressing, and there's ways to do it that are not healthy and not positive, but if we are expressing, we're getting rid of it, and we're putting it somewhere else. As long as we're not putting it onto other people, it's being transmuted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
And it can be a driving force for positive change. I mean, anger is many times the driving force between the most driving force behind the most positive change, because something has to be, it's the opposite of complacency in many ways.
Yeah. Right. The other thing that I kind of wonder if you're just conscious of this, or if this just happens, and or it's part of your writing process. But your words and your lyrics, I kind of separate the two because they have two effects, especially on this record, which they adjust the perspective, and you, as a storyteller, can bring someone in, and your storytelling really locks in the listener, I think. But also on this record, you get like a bird's eye view again of expansive landscape. But did that just happen? Are you aware of that? Or maybe you don't even feel that because you're subjective. But That is my experience with the record. It's like zooming in. You could zoom in and out depending on the piece you're listening to.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm aware of it. I don't do it consciously in my writing.
Yeah.
My writing really does pour out of me. But especially on this record, I mean, it's very cinematic. It really is, like the scope of it. And I grew up watching a lot of movies, and I grew up, reading big, fat novels that really do that. I mean, Moby Dick also, I mean, my list of books is so hilarious, but Moby Dick is also, famously this wildly expansive novel where, like, two of the most famous images from it are he talks about this bird's eye view, like how an eagle swoops through a valley. And on the other hand, he'll go so far as to talk about the tiniest bone in the whale's body.
Yeah.
And there's that sort of perspective shift. So I learned from these great novelists, for sure. But also especially on this record, this theme kept coming up of framing, prosceniums and camera angles. And I see music as well, not in a synesthetic sense, but especially in the way that I arrange it, things live in different spaces. It's visual for me. So I think that the lyrics mirror that.
Well, I'd like to play the line. Is that cool with you?
That's cool with me.
All right, let's listen to it.
She was the first one to go. I'll be back for you, the final word she spoke. And he was the second one to
beautiful. Another dynamic I just thought of listening to that is, especially both the singles that are out now, man, that they really just they slowly build, and by the end of both of these tunes, it's 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 on fire. And I really love that, and I didn't notice that at first, especially with the line. But there's just this, it's pretty subtle, but then once you're aware of it, it's pretty energizing, I would say, the very least.
Good. I like it. I like that. I think I'd rather you be energized at the end of my song than like kind of tired and ready to set it all down.
Yeah. And so you tracked this in Nashville, and you said with a bazillion people.
Yep.
Did you start with how do you write, or how did you write this record? Did you go in with demos with people you don't know, or did it mirror the way you did it with Beeman at all?
This one was completely different. I mean, there
Okay.
were some songs that I had pretty extensive touring experience under my belt, because I'd been touring these songs forever. Just songs that I didn't put on shades because I knew that I couldn't effectively deliver them essentially
Yeah.
on my own. And so, but fan favorites or whatever, songs that I really had toured a lot and so knew what I needed to sound. I didn't really have demos. I had band recordings from the road, basically. But I didn't bring my touring band into the recording studio. I wanted it to be completely fresh and there to be absolutely no sort of attachment to what we'd done. So some of the songs were served as templates, but it was important to me that nobody felt like, oh, this is really important. This is my part and we need to do this. And it was totally fresh and new. And most of the songs the bones of them were tracked live. So
They
what
were,
you
yeah. I
hear
was gonna
there,
ask you.
the bone, like the bass drums and guitars were all tracked live in that song. And
I can feel that for sure.
yes, and I overdubbed the vocal on that one. And then the strings were overdubbed and the keys were overdubbed.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to get too technical into the mix,
happy
because
to.
I don't know if it's the mix. Sometimes it's just the way you play it, and then you start stacking instruments and songs and words onto a piece of music. But there's both crystal clarity to these songs, and that kind of provides space in between what you hear sonically, which again, as you said a few minutes ago, it's really cinematically all tied together, including just the mix almost. And I don't know if it's the natural mix or,
I am psychotic about mixing.
All right.
Absolutely psychotic.
Yay.
So many relationships have very nearly been destroyed. And actually, a number of people tried to mix this record and really did try. And we're talking like absolute legends at their craft. And ended up coming back to me and being like, you have to do it, essentially. So I worked with my partner and producing partner on this record, Kenneth Pattingale. He sat at the computer and made the moves, and I was an absolute dictator behind him.
Wow.
And it was funny. I mean, even at the end, and I don't think they'll mind me sharing this, but when I signed my record deal with City Slang, they came to me and they were like, okay, we absolutely love everything, but we want to remix the record. And I was like,
Whoa.
good luck, guys. Good luck. This is like 2.5 years. You should see the sessions. The Pro Tools sessions are maniacal. I really should get
That
some
sounds fun.
screenshots of those so that you can see. Because I'm there, like, the panning is... That's what I mean. Kenneth would do the moves, but I would be there drawing the little things.
Yeah.
And I know nothing about I have no technical background in music. It's just pure intuition.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy. Thank you for bringing that up. And I'm glad that you hear clarity there, because my goal with all of it is always to balance that clarity with the blur. I generally like when you don't know what an instrument is.
Yeah.
Unless it's like very clearly, oh, these are the drums, we don't want to like muddy those too much. But when it comes to other stuff, I really like it to be this sort of fluid, this dance, and to feel like things come in and out and leave very specifically. And it's a full experience.
Yeah, it is, especially with headphones. I did it on the plane this morning.
Yeah, I mixed it for Apple headphones because I figured that is, a lot of people listen to music that way, and it's inside you. I wanted it to sound good when it's literally inside your skull.
Right. Yeah. It worked.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Sorry, City Slang.
Yeah.
Do your own remix.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? I was gonna ask you. Oh, do you remember recording The Hands?
Oh, that's my favorite song on the record.
It's my favorite song.
That's my favorite song.
This is gonna come out before The Hands, so
I'm so happy you brought that up.
Oh God, I listened to it like just 5 times in a row.
How sick is that arrangement? So that song, of course, I remember recording it. First of all, also one of the first songs I ever wrote. I wrote that on piano.
Oh, really?
In my old apartment in New York. And it was originally this kind of like rolling piano thing with this sort of Satie-esque, like stilted, kind of like creepy Igor vibe on the keys.
Yeah.
And then that was one of the songs that was rescued by my band. My touring band rescued a lot of these songs from the trash can. Like I'm Lying was rescued by the drummer. Hands was rescued by Janie, my bass player, who said that it would be really cool as sort of a dub adjacent song.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we did that on tour. We never fully locked in on it though. I listening back in the studio before to try and find a good template for it. We never really locked in. But I had this kind of idea, and then we recorded that one, and the absolute magic key to that song is Anthony DaCosta, who played a lot of the electric guitars on this record. He didn't play on the line, but he came in with one of the rubber bridge guitars that everybody plays now that Ruben makes here in LA. You know those guitars?
I don't know those guitars. No. Rubber
you will
bridge.
see them. You will see them everywhere now. They're rad.
Okay.
But he came in with a rubber bridge baritone, I want to say. I might be wrong about that. And we tracked it live 3 times maybe. One of them was absolutely on fire. And then he went in and laid down whatever the hell is happening in that middle part. And it's my favorite. It's my favorite thing on the. I wish I could just go out and sell that to the people.
Yeah. There's moments. I mean, I listened to it about 5 times, and there's even moments. I kind of visualize percentages of songs. I was recording all weekend, so I'm kind of in that headspace. I was like. I can remember about 75% what's going on in that song, right now.
I love that.
You feel like you're in there too, for sure.
I love that. What's also on that song, which was very validating for Kenneth, who he'd been dragging around. It's kind of like an anvil. I don't know if it's it's like a giant pipe.
Yeah.
That you would have like a shipping. On a ship, or I don't even know. It's a huge iron thing, and he'd literally been hauling it around his whole life, and I don't think he'd ever used it on a song. And then, of course, I like to make my own percussion, and I did it less so on this record. And I was like, man, I miss my sounds. I miss my tactility, and there was the old pipe. And so I got to play the old pipe on that song, which is thrilling. Yeah. And my Echoplex came out, which was really exciting because I'd purchased that on eBay and then regretted it immediately because it's like the proper one and it was so finicky and I never could get it going, but it works beautifully on that song.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Perfectly out of control. It's great.
Yeah,
I was
thank
in a band with someone who had an Echoplex and another one had a Space Echo. I don't even know how we were day to day with those things.
I think Elvis had us do that on one of the tours. Yeah.
Well, you pulled it off. That's for
Thank
sure.
you. I'm so glad.
To say the least.
I'm so glad my money wasn't wasted.
Yeah, congratulations. This record is just incredible.
Thank you.
I want to ask you, you said at the beginning that your teacher told you that you were writing lyrics more than poetry.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still write poetry? Do you have a different perspective on that whole thing?
I don't. I fall back into writing poetry. I really don't as much anymore. I still read a lot of poetry, and I engage with the world through the eyes of a poet, I think.
Yeah.
Observationally. And I really cherish what some would consider to be the mundane. And as the older and older I get, the more I'm really in awe and wonder of the little things that we take for granted. And that to me is poetry.
Yeah.
But I need to get back into writing poetry. I think that I have a great book in me somewhere. And I am thinking of one really cool poem I wrote that's very Cormac McCarthy, actually. But, I don't know. We'll see. I have to write more songs first.
Yeah. So what's next? Are you gonna tour on this sucker?
There will be touring. There will be playing. There will be, I'm sure, more podcasts.
Yeah.
Which is great.
What about instrumentation? Do you have different
for the band?
plans? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is not the kind of record that's going to sound exactly the same live, because I can't afford an orchestra.
Yeah.
And I can't play with tracks generally. Like, I've just never been able to. I'm so fluid with time. I guess we can try. We can try and do some tracks. But I'm hoping to do a few shows with strings for sure. Strings, that's how I got started. My very first show in this outfit as this, as Vera was a string quartet, me just in a string quartet.
Oh, really?
And that was, an upright bass. Blue de Tiger on upright bass. She's now a superstar. She was the first person to play bass for my songs, which is super cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd love to play strings. I like playing solo.
Oh, you do?
I do. I pack a lot of power. My guitar, my guitar technique doesn't even really come through on this record, but I play very specifically and uniquely, and I really like surprising people with the power of just me on stage.
Yeah.
But, I think Kenneth and I are going to do some duo guitar stuff, which will be rad, and and then we'll have some full band for sure.
Cool.
Gotta get Anthony. I have to call him and get him on board now so he can play that hand solo.
That's
just
right.
Live. Yeah.
I'm no producer, but some Mellotron string samples would sound good.
We have a Mellotron.
Dirty ones.
I have a dusty mini mellow waiting upstairs to work again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, when you get out there, travel safe.
Thank you.
And congratulations again. This record is fantastic. I apologize. I forget when's it coming
out? February 2nd, 2024.
It comes out the day after my birthday, February
Great.
2nd, 2024.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for making a record and releasing it right after my birthday.
Well, thanks for giving it some airtime here and
of course,
giving me some a reason to talk about it, and for such wonderful questions. They aren't all wonderful questions when you go out and do these things, you know.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm trying.
Doing great.
Okay, well, take care of yourself, and thanks again. It was nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you too. Thank you so much, Joe.
All right, bye.
Bye bye.
Go where you will, do what you want. Cut across the grass, say it's the sidewalk. Exit the window, swear it's the door. Bend down the ceiling, watch as I crawl along the floor, the floor. Tell me you love me, I trust what you say. Just get it together, it's all okay. Piss on my back, tell me it's rain, then expect me to stay. But I've wasted nights waiting for the sun you said would rise, and I've gone for days knowing the night would fall again. You tell me you love me, at least that's what you say. Swear all of the things I know you did, they come from my head. You tell me you love me, so it must be okay.